Let me tell you something straight. When India moved, the world felt it, and America was shocked. Not because they underestimated India, no, but because India overdelivered, quietly, relentlessly, with the power of 1.4 billion dreams surging forward like a tidal wave. They didn't see it coming, not like this. Not this fast, not this fierce. Because while the world was talking, India was doing. While others were doubting, India was building. Building satellites, building steel, building software, highways, hydrogen plants, and something even more powerful: belief. Listen, in the gym, nobody cares how much you plan, you lift. Or you don't. And India, it lifted itself from centuries of struggle, and it didn't ask for permission. It didn't wait for applause. It earned respect the hard way, with calloused hands, burning minds, and unshakable heart. And America turned its head, not out of fear, but respect, because when a sleeping giant stands tall, even the strongest must take notice. This isn't just economics. This isn't just trade routes and stock markets. This is about identity, power, legacy, about a nation that was once colonized, now colonizing Mars with machines of its own design, about a people who were once told they were behind, now writing the code that runs the world's future. It's about a flag, saffron and green, flying high not just over cricket fields, but across launch pads, startup stages, and AI labs humming at midnight. And the young people, oh man, the young people, they are not waiting. They are running harder, hungrier, and faster than ever. And when youth meets discipline, that's a force of nature. This is what shocks the world, not noise, results, not chaos, clarity. India didn't just move, it shifted gravity. And when gravity shifts, even giants must adjust. Because this isn't just India rising, it's a nation flexing. It's a billion hearts pounding in rhythm, saying our time is now. Can you feel that? That's the sound of transformation. That's the echo of steel forging in fire. That's what happens when potential meets purpose. You don't just witness it, you feel it in your bones. India's rise was unexpected in its speed and intensity, catching the world, especially America, off guard. While other nations talked or hesitated, India took decisive action and made tangible progress across multiple sectors. India transformed from a once colonized nation to a powerful force in technology, space, and global influence. The youth of India are portrayed as a relentless, unstoppable force driving the country's transformation. The speech emphasizes the power of action over words, discipline over doubt, and results over recognition. India's movement is framed as a shift in global power dynamics, a moment that demands the world's attention. No one truly saw it coming, not like this. Not with this velocity, not with this fire. India didn't knock politely on the world's door. It kicked it open. And when it did, even America, with all its muscle, all its might, had to step back and say, wait a minute, what just happened? This wasn't a soft rise, this was a surge, like a dam breaking after decades of silent pressure building behind it, like a tiger pacing in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to leap, and then, with no warning, it strikes. That's what India did. The shock wasn't rooted in arrogance, it came from miscalculation, from years of the world seeing India only through the lens of its past, of poverty, of bureaucracy, of delay. But behind those assumptions, something was boiling, a hunger, a storm, a billion people who were tired of being looked over, tired of waiting their turn, tired of being told, you're not ready. But India was ready. And while the world debated and hesitated, India executed. It sent rockets to the moon with less money than Hollywood spends on a sci-fi movie. It turned its youth into coders, creators, CEOs. It rose in silence, no drama, no headlines, just relentless progress. It built bridges, not just physical ones, but bridges of influence, trade, and technology that now connect it to every corner of the globe. And when that movement became too big to ignore, the shock hit. Not because India appeared out of nowhere, but because it had been coming all along, quietly, consistently, unshakably. People say power shifts slowly, but sometimes shifts all at once. Like when a champion steps into the ring and, in one move, changes everything you thought you knew. That's what India did. It wasn't just a rise, it was a revelation, a reminder that greatness doesn't come from noise, it comes from grit, from decades of trying, failing, learning, and pushing forward anyway. While the rest of the world sat in conference rooms, sipping coffee and arguing over what might work, India rolled up its sleeves and got to work. No excuses, no delays, no roundtables about whether the time was right. India decided the time is now, and moved. It wasn't glamorous. There weren't fireworks. There were long nights in cramped coding labs, engineers sleeping on factory floors, students studying under streetlights because the power was out. But the dream stayed on. Villages that once had no signal now stream lectures from MIT. Farmers with cracked hands using smartphones to track market prices. Mothers who once walked miles for water, now teaching their daughters how to build robots. This wasn't luck. It wasn't magic. It was sweat, sacrifice, strategy. It was millions of hands working together, not for applause, not for headlines, but for something bigger, a future they could touch. And while other nations obsessed over obstacles, India looked at the same walls and said, "We'll build through." While some said, "Wait for foreign investment," India said, "We'll invest in ourselves." While many feared the weight of 1 billion people, India turned that billion into strength, into fuel, into momentum that no one could slow down. That's what shocked the world. Because it wasn't just about money. Wasn't just about machines, it was about mindset, that unstoppable, unshakable belief that action beats doubt, that movement destroys hesitation, that the world doesn't owe you a place, you have to earn it, brick by brick, bite by bite. India didn't wait to be invited to the table. It built its own. And now the same companies, the same leaders who once looked past India, now look to India for innovation, for talent, for leadership. But make no mistake, India's strength didn't come from being handed a seat. It came from standing when others sat, from choosing movement over comfort, from getting dirty while the world watched from clean glass towers. Because in the end, history doesn't remember the ones who hesitated. It remembers the ones who moved. Once, India's name was written in history books as the land of spices, silk, and shadows, a colony, a conquered people, a quiet page in someone else's story. But now, India is writing its own chapter, and it's doing it in bold, permanent ink. The kind that doesn't fade, the kind that makes the world stop and read. This isn't just economic growth, this is resurrection. A transformation so deep it echoes back through centuries of struggle, sacrifice, and silence. From the chains of colonization to the countdown of rocket launches. That's not just progress, that's redemption. A nation once divided by lines drawn by foreign hands is now uniting through lines of code written by its own children. Flying its tricolor, not just from ancient forts and crowded stadiums, but from spacecraft orbiting other worlds. The very same soil that once bore the boots of invaders now gives rise to satellites, supercomputers, and CEOs leading global empires. This is a message to the world. We are no longer the story told about us. We are the storytellers now. And when people said, "You're too late," India replied, "We're right on time." When they said, "You're too poor," India answered with billion-dollar startups. When they said, "You're too many," India turned its population into the biggest human capital engine on earth. Because legacy is not something you inherit. It's something you build. And India is building it in real time, with steel, with science, with soul. It's not just fighting for a seat at the table. It's changing the table itself. No longer the back office, no longer the support act. India is stepping into the spotlight, not as a backup, but as a leader. The world used to look at India through a rearview mirror, through statistics of poverty, chaos, and contradiction. But that mirror has shattered. And what rises from those shards is not a victim, not a follower, but a force. Because you can't measure a nation's future by its past. You cannot stop the momentum of a people who have remembered who they truly are. They said the youth were distracted, glued to screens, chasing trends, lost in noise. But in India, something else was happening. Behind those screens, young minds were waking up, not just consuming the future, creating it. These aren't kids waiting for instructions. These are coders writing the next breakthrough app before breakfast. Teenagers launching startups from village rooftops. Students mastering machine learning in one hand and building satellites with the other. Some of them learned in English, some in Hindi, Tamil, Bengali, Marathi. But the language they all speak fluently is ambition. There's fire in their eyes, and not the kind you fake for a college resume. I'm talking about the real thing, the kind of hunger that comes from watching your parents work 2 jobs just to send you to school. The kind of drive that's born when you realize you're not just studying for grades, you're studying for generations. And here's the truth. When youth meets purpose, when energy meets vision, you don't just get progress, you get revolution. They're not sitting in fear waiting for the world to change. They're standing up and changing it. They're turning garages into innovation labs. They're teaching themselves to code from YouTube, to pitch investors from WhatsApp, to design the next biotech miracle using borrowed textbooks and unstoppable will. And the best part, they're doing it together. From Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from small towns to mega cities, the young in India aren't divided by geography. They're united by intention. There's a heartbeat pulsing through this generation, and it says, we're not asking anymore. We're building, we're rising, we're becoming. This is what power looks like before the world gives it a title. This is the kind of force that makes history nervous because it cannot be bought, bribed, or broken. And while some countries are aging, slowing down, holding on to what was, India's youth are running. And they're not looking back. They're not burdened by old definitions of what is or isn't possible. They don't just see the future, they know they are the future. In the world of iron and effort, words are cheap. You can talk about vision, strategy. All of it sounds nice in boardrooms and press releases. But in the real world, in the arena, none of that matters unless you deliver. India didn't waste time explaining itself. It didn't throw slogans into the air and wait for applause. It got its hands dirty. It put its head down. It chose discipline over drama. And that's where real transformation begins, not in speeches, but in sweat. You look at a country that built digital infrastructure for over 1 billion people in record time with almost no blueprint to follow. That's not theory. That's execution. You look at a nation that reduced extreme poverty while expanding its space program, sending missions to the moon and Mars. That's not noise. That's balance. That's focus, precision. People around the world were talking about blockchain, AI, and fintech like they were out of reach for emerging economies. India made them tools of empowerment. It didn't wait to catch up. It leapfrogged. From cashless villages to biometric identity systems covering almost every citizen. This is what it looks like when ideas become impact. And there's something beautiful, something powerful about that quiet confidence. No chest beating, no big promises, just relentless day after day delivery. The kind of progress that doesn't scream for attention, but earns respect. Because that's what the world forgot. Applause doesn't build nations. Discipline does. The quiet persistence of a startup founder coding past midnight. The determination of a young woman crossing rivers and hills to teach school children in rural Bihar. The resilience of small business owners adapting, surviving, thriving without a spotlight, without a safety net. And the best part, none of this was handed to India. It wasn't gifted, it wasn't given, it was earned. Every inch of progress carved out by effort, every win powered by consistency. By the belief that it's not the loudest in the room who changes the world, it's the ones who show up every single day, even when no one's watching. Something shifted, and the world felt it, not like a press release, not like a policy change. No, this was deeper. This was tectonic. This was the moment when India stopped orbiting around global power centers and became one. You could feel it in the way global CEOs started flying to Bengaluru, not just for partnerships, but for answers, in the way international forums stopped talking about India and started talking with India. And in that stunned silence when the same countries that once handed down advice now ask, how did you do it? This isn't just about GDP or defense deals. This is about gravity. For decades, global influence was like a spotlight shining from a few old capitals. But now the light is shifting and India's casting its own glow. The rules are being rewritten. The center of gravity is moving east. And it's not moving quietly. It's moving with purpose, with presence, with pride. When a country once seen as the back office of the world starts